Hi, I'm Heidi O'Donnell Eastman, and I'm a teacher at the Global Learning Charter Public School in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I teach history at the high school level, world history, United States history, art history, and current events. I mostly teach students in grades 10, 11, and 12. I've also created a program called Port to Port, which I teach here in New Bedford, and I use my classroom as a laboratory and incubator to try new approaches to global learning. I'll talk more about this a little later, port to port. I've also had the opportunity to take this program, this port to port program, on the road, both nationally and internationally. It's been very exciting, and I've worked with some amazing people, amazing students, and I always share that with my colleagues back here in New Bedford, and I always find a way for my students here to either Skype in with me or me to connect with them somehow when I'm on the road. So it makes for an interesting experience all around. So a little bit more about me. World travel, the sea and ships are part of my DNA. My grandfather, my great-grandfather were shipbuilders on the River Clyde in Scotland. My father was a merchant marine. I grew up sailing out of the port of Provincetown on Cape Cod, and I've traveled extensively and lived abroad for more than 4 years. So I feel that global learning is just a natural segue for me in my life's journey. So I'm going to explain a little bit what port to port is. Port to port is a unique way of integrating a multidisciplinary approach to study and understand globalization and engage in global learning. So we ask a number of questions. One is, what are the implications of the things and the people and ideas which flow into and or out of a place? We practice place-based experiential learning. It uses what's in your immediate environment. This could include walks in parks, museums, municipal buildings, visiting important infrastructure like a train or bus station, a port, a water system, a sewer system, all kinds of things. So we use this strategy to capture the student's imagination and advance environmental stewardship and civic engagement. That's a really key piece. Place-based learning begins with asking other questions as well, such as, where am I? What is the natural and social history of this place? How does this place fit into the larger world? And that's where the global learning comes in. So this course was created in the port city of New Bedford, Massachusetts, a world-renowned city. Think Melville's Moby Dick, and the #1 fishing port in the USA. So students come to understand that every city or town has a story, from the cornfield in Iowa to the docklands in Dublin. In a world where change is constant and the world may seem smaller because of globalization, it's talked about everywhere, every day, globalization this, globalization that. It's vital to understand our part in this world and to feel this connectedness. So gaining this understanding of things, of people and ideas that flow in and out of a place will help make us global citizens. We understand in this dynamic fabric that the mayor or the city sanitation worker, the artist, and the riverboat captain are all players on the global stage. This helps students foster a critical sense of commitment to a world of interdependence. The students collaborate with local citizens, with organizations, agencies, businesses, and government. Working alongside these community members, students help make plans that shape the future of social, physical, and economic environments and address equality um, in our world, or lack thereof. Students are encouraged to view their community as an ecosystem and to understand the relationships and processes to support healthy living in the community. And a really important part of this is to map their surroundings. So they map their school, they map their surrounding community. Students create visual representations of the systems which are nested within larger systems that constitute their local place in its wholeness. And this is a really important part of this global learning. And it's really where we start, where we launch our global learning. Something I've been interested for a long time, or at least since I've been working in New Bedford, which is about 14 years, I'm always confronted with students saying, "Oh, I want to get out of here. There's nothing here. This place is kind of a no end, a go nowhere place." And I really feel that um, I've learned that there's really, the city has so much to offer. So I've been interested in post-industrial urban centers, particularly interested in the issues facing young people in these cities. I've come to appreciate in New Bedford, in beautiful South Coast, Massachusetts, that it has stunning architecture, an amazing coastline, it's culturally diverse, it has a vibrant art scene. It's really a city on the move. It's a small city, and it's a city where it's really quite easy to make connections. And I really want to share that with my students, many of which who were born and raised here, but have not had the opportunity to see all the corners and niches, that are in the city. Okay, so the goal here today in this broadcast is to give you some simple tools for you and your students to engage in global learning. The skills that will be honed or that are honed in this approach: critical thinking for sure, problem solving, research and writing, public speaking and communication skills. And also something that is very, very important to be a global citizen is something I like to call resilience, to understand that um, people in different places have different perspectives, and to appreciate that. And you may not like it, you may not agree with it, but to be, resilient when you're engaging in that, kind of experience. The other really important skill that we use is I really love for the students to develop a sense of observation, of really practicing observing their environment, their surroundings, and then to record those observations. I'll talk a little bit more about that, um, but it's very important to do this. And this is part of what I like to call the steady diet that we follow. I'll explain that a little later. When I was in high school with my passport in hand, I ended up taking a gap year. After high school, I traveled in Europe and basically haven't stopped since. I ended up enrolling in a French university. Years later, I ended up um, co being a co-founder of a bilingual school uh, in Rhode Island, and I also worked for a major French company as a spokesperson for a number of years. That said, one does not have to leave the classroom to engage in global learning, and I'm a firm believer of that. As I stated earlier, global learning is about understanding the interconnectedness of humans, of things, and ideas. And it's the practice of looking more deeply at what is already in front of us. So, what will students gain from exposure to global learning? Important question, right? First and foremost, they will gain a sense of place. The next thing is to really become fluent with their knowledge of world geography. In addition, students begin to understand the implications of things and people and ideas that flow into and out of a place that I mentioned earlier, including themselves, and look at the implications that these things have on a place. The next thing is to look at the interconnectedness and interdependence of those things, of those ideas, of those people, or of those goods. I always like to use the example of the t-shirt or something tangible like their sneakers or their backpack or something that's on them that they're really familiar with, that they put on every day or they see every day in their world. And I come back to that constantly throughout the year. So this idea of a t-shirt, for example. So the cotton, okay, the t-shirt is made of cotton. The cotton may be grown in Texas. The designer of the t-shirt might be from Los Angeles. The woven cloth from the cotton, from the cotton plant that's made into thread, that's woven into a textile, is done maybe in China. The t-shirt itself may be manufactured in, I don't know, let's say Bangladesh. It might be sold in London. Sometimes this t-shirt or this idea of this t-shirt has traveled around the globe once, twice, or a couple of times, before it lands in your closet. So we talk about this sort of concept and we come back to it again and again, and we use that, and we use things that touch us. And articles of clothing are really easy. Another one, of course, is food. I'll talk about that a little later. So global learning is a great way for students to share their heritage and their story, and how does their story fit in the story of globalization. And this can be a really powerful experience for the student. So let's talk about the pragmatics. Let's start at the beginning. How do we actually do this? How do we implement this practice? First thing I'm going to talk about is budget, because finances and money are really important in schools, and so many schools have such small budgets. But the good news here is that really you don't have to spend much money at all. Very little, in fact. I'm also going to talk about materials, or what I call the tools of the trade. So implementing global learning in your program or classroom is absolutely not a budget buster. In fact, like I said, it requires very little, much less than the cost of the average high school history textbook. All right, so what are the tools of the trade? I love technology, and I use it daily in a myriad of ways in my classroom. I Skype, I have a smart board, I use, you know, music, I use YouTube, I use lots of different programs, and it's fun, it's interesting, it's exciting how we can access information really, really easily. But I also employ low-tech tools, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So low-tech tools, I'm going to give you a little list here. So one set of laminated maps, a world map and a US map, and this is the map I'm talking about. I absolutely love this. This is the world map on this side, as you can see, and I'm going to flip it over, and this is the map of the United States. And I use this every day. It is fantastic. It's a great tool. It's not expensive. If you can, buy a set of these, and you can use them for all of your classes, and you can have a lot of fun with it. The other thing is you want a dry erase marker. So you want a set for your class, and I pass them out at the beginning of class, and you write on the maps. We use this when we do current events, when we're opening a unit or a new material, or we're talking about any place in the world, no matter where it is. We use the laminated maps. We circle, we X, we draw lines connecting them, and it's fun. Students love anything that's interactive, and it gets them to become really familiar with the map of the world and different kinds of maps, political maps, physical maps, etc. So it's a super, super great tool. The other thing that I love to use is a sketchbook or journal. And I'm kind of particular about this, and I've tried many different ones. And the one that I really love right now is has the spiral, has the spiral. And this one is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and I love it. It has perforated sheets that you can pull out if you need to. This is a Canson sketch. It's got a nice weight. It's not too thin, but it's not too thick. It's a great size. It can fit in a backpack or it can fit in a pouch. And I actually have a little pouch here that I put my things in when we go out in the field. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that later. Students also want to always have some other really basic things like clear plastic rulers. Want to have some good drawing pencils, a good pencil sharpener, some good gum erasers. I also get a set for the classroom of really simple, inexpensive watercolors, and they're not much money at all, and you can get a classroom set, and it will definitely last the year, sometimes even into the next year. So I think that is a great tool. The other thing that I like to supply my students with or have them bring in are rubber bands for when we go out in the field and it's windy. You can put a rubber band around your journal on either side. It will keep the papers from flapping around. So that is an important piece. I've added in the past couple of years something really fun and I'm very passionate about, and that is a calligraphy set. And I have some nice fancy calligraphy pens with nibs that I use, different colored nibs. And once the students get good at using the simple felt tip calligraphy pen, they graduate to the more sophisticated pen. Now, you say, why this? Writing, who writes anymore by hand? Everything is done, on a computer, on a laptop, or whatever. Well, it slows the mind down. It's actually quite, it's meditative, and which is something else I practice in my classes. And I always find that there's a handful of kids every year that just become completely obsessed by this. They fall in love with it, and they really take to it. They realize it's work like anything. It takes a lot of practice, but when it's done well, it can be really beautiful. And it also is about making your work excellent. So I will talk about that in a little bit as well. But the calligraphy is a nice addition. I do teach everyone. I give, a couple of little lessons. And for anyone who wants to go further, I provide that, after school, or someone wants to stay after class if they're able to for a bit, or they practice at home. I have a lot of things that they can use. So it's kind of a fun thing for the students. And it looks really beautiful, and it really adds to their work. So when students are in 11th grade, when I teach them world history or port-to-port history, I do something that I really love with the students, and most of them really love it, is that they write their own history books. And they start this at the beginning of the year. They work on it all year, and they do it in their journals that I showed you, their journals and sketchbooks. This is an example of a student's, it says My World History, and it's a world map, a segment of a world map. And so the history books that they create are actually a combination of um, things that they are doing in their world, in their class, in field studies and walks in the neighborhood, observations and recordings, and also things that we're doing in the classroom that strictly have to do with the curriculum. Additionally, we add current events, what's happening in the world, what's happening nationally, what's happening locally. So it really is their world history, their experience. And we use, like I said, we use the map drawings, we use the journals, we use calligraphy pens, good pencils, the set of watercolors, other simple tools to make a really, really beautiful project. Something that we employ when we write our history books and record things in our journals and sketchbooks is we use the educator Ron Berger's um, lesson on Austin's butterfly. And I'm going to leave a link to that at the end of this broadcast. But Ron Berger is an educator that many of us here at the Global Learning Charter Public School have met with or worked with or used his work, and I'm a firm believer in it. And the story of Austin's butterfly is really about making your work excellent. And how do you do that? You do it with a kind of critique and looking at work. And peers will look at work and they offer um, a critique that's very kind and very specific. And those two simple things, being kind, being specific, and how that can help their peers create better work. And so I use that in the creating of these, world history books, and it's really, a powerful experience. When the students do their work, I offer a very simple kind of assessment. I look at their work and I take a green marker or a red marker and I put a little line at the top or a little line next to the assignment. It's very discreet. And the green mark represents go and like keep doing what you're doing, keep on track. This is great. Red represents please stop, come see me, chat with me. I'll talk to you about your work. I'll be kind. I'll be specific. We'll look at how this can improve or something that you might be missing or have missed, and we'll go forward like this. So it's really simple, but it's been quite effective for me. So I encourage you to give that a try. So I've talked about going out in the field and going out in your neighborhood or mapping your neighborhood or mapping your school or your town. Now, not every school has a budget for a field study. I recognize that it can be very difficult and can be difficult to ask students to support that by, paying for buses and paying for entrance fees, etc. That said, field study is a great thing to do. And if you do, or if you can, I highly, highly recommend organizing a well-planned field study to enhance your global learning. So look at your curriculum, plan ahead, that's key. Global learning is interdisciplinary, so co-plan with your colleagues. Um, I often plan with my science colleagues, my ELA colleagues, my math colleagues, of course, colleagues in arts, etc., technology. So I definitely recommend that. And of course, we want to make the field study meaningful and experiential. Don't just do the field study that's been done for the past 10 years because that's sort of expected. Make it meaningful, make it something that the students will come back and be excited about, and maybe not that day, but it will leave some kind of impact on them. And also try to make it something that you can come back to as a point of reference throughout your term or your semester. I think that can be really, really powerful. So I require my students to bring their journals and sketchbooks, or journals/sketchbooks when we are out in the field. If your school is within walking distance to a library, to a gallery, or a municipal building of interest, make good use of those places. They can be really fantastic, they can be free, easy to get to. So the other constraint can be time. How am I going to fit this in within one period or two periods? And trust me, I do this very, very often in one period. And with practice, it can work. Practice and planning. I managed to get the kids out of the classroom for walks in the neighborhood during one period. It can be done. Um, just make sure you've done your front loading beforehand, the day before, and have them ready to go. Have them grab their gear or their Ziploc bag or whatever they have, which has their tools of the trade that I mentioned earlier, their sketchbook, their pencils, maybe watercolors or whatever. Sometimes their phones are important to have because you want to take pictures of things, so we employ that as well. Sometimes we do go out with a video camera, and I've been recently graduated as a community TV producer. Not a great one, but I am doing it. And so we're practicing recording some of our outings, which is a lot of fun. Um, so if your school is not within walking distance to the aforementioned, think about the school's physical plant and what it has to offer to global learning. Maybe the cafeteria, maybe a great painting in the building, maybe the music room, maybe faculty or staff who are experts in something you're teaching. Possibilities really are endless, so definitely check that out. And remember, on every given corner, there is a story. So I'm going to go back to this concept of a steady diet. You and I know that a great basketball player is great because they practice all the time. They dribble, they shoot, they work out, etc. Same with doing global learning. So it's that steady diet. In global learning, like anything, practice makes perfect. So what does this include? This includes looking at headlines, yes, current events, on a regular basis. We, as a school, have a subscription to the New York Times, so that's the paper we use, nytimes.com, and I can access that paper at any time. My students can access it, and so we regularly look at the headlines. Where are these places that are mentioned? So we pull out our laminated map here. We find the place on the map, we use our dry erase, we discuss it, we look at any vocabularies, we look at inferences in the headline, and a steady diet of this, you'll find that your students within a very short time are talking about global affairs, or talking about national affairs with global implications, or talking about local affairs, and making those connections. So it's very powerful. It's something that I do when I travel abroad as well. And it's a simple thing. It does take time, but practice makes perfect, like I said, and it's really worth it. The other thing is practice looking at art on a regular basis and listening to music. I'll show you an example. I have this book. It's called 120 Great Maritime Paintings from All Over the World, and it comes with a CD, and we listen to music, we look at paintings. We have a routine that we follow when we look at these paintings to help students make sense of the paintings. We map out where these paintings were painted, who is the intended audience, And by doing that, again, that steady diet, students become really comfortable with analyzing art, incorporating that into their global learning. Same with music. Music, I think, and food are two of the best, the absolute best way to explore global learning. Music is endless. Using music and connect with your music department or your arts department, and I'm sure they can assist you in making some really interesting connections. Also, ask your students, what do they like to listen to? Where is the music? Um, you know, who do they listen to, and where are they from? Um, do they listen to music in Spanish? Do they listen to music in Portuguese? Do they listen to whatever? So I found that to be fun, and I personally have learned a lot from my students by incorporating that. Hey, food, the great connector. Food is a fantastic way to explore and engage in global learning. Most of us really love food, love to talk about food, love to eat food. So, and it has some really interesting stories. So, my curriculum in world history in 11th grade, I incorporate a pretty important unit about the spice trade. What are spices? What are they used for? Why were they so important? Why did the crown of Spain and Portugal and Britain and France, etc., risk danger and hostility and the cost to go out and explore and find spices and bring them back because they were really valuable. They helped things smell better and taste better and people feel better. And they were used for currency, they were used for dye and color and a myriad of things. So very, very exciting story. So something I do is just before mid-year, just before the holidays, I have sort of a culmination experience in the classroom called the Enlightenment Tea Party. And really, we've just finished studying the Enlightenment and the scientific revolutionaries. We've finished the spice trade, and we talk about food, and we talk about food in relation to family and what that means in family. And I've found over the years that most people find that there's one dish or a couple of dishes in their family, repertoire that has real meaning, deep meaning for whatever reason. It could just taste really great, or it could be something that a family member or, a deceased family member or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or a neighbor or somebody important in their life made and it was delicious or it made them feel a certain way. And so we celebrate that and we talk about that. And so what I ask for the students is to do this. We celebrate this by having students come up with one recipe that they feel, very connected to. And there are certain requirements. It has to have at least 5 spices or herbs in this dish. It could be sweet, it could be savory, it could be a main course, it could be appetizer, dessert, whatever. And they are to research this, they are to write out the recipe, they are to prepare the recipe, and to bring it in and to share it when we have our Enlightenment Tea Party. They also dress as one of the scientific revolutionaries, which is a tremendous amount of fun. Um, but something else really special happens during this event. Yes, the food tastes delicious. Yes, they look great, and it's a different kind of class. It's not just books or chalk and talk. It's you're engaging in food. But the special thing is the family engagement. Their guardians or parents or extended family become involved. And so I get to see them often. They call me or they email me. They get really, really excited about bringing their family dish in. And I will tell you, it is the highlight of my year. I have tasted some amazing food. The students are incredibly proud of whatever they have prepared. They get to share their family experience. And in my classroom, I have food from all over the world because my students are from all over the world. So it is just the epitome of global learning. And I hear these stories of how special this is to them, this particular dish. And anyway, so think about this. Think about food. Think about how this can be a great way to explore global learning. All right, so talking about food, I would be remiss if I didn't spend a fair amount of time talking about this delicious little tangy, sweet piece of fruit, the clementine. So anyone who knows me knows that around this time of year, around November, I'm sending an email out to my colleagues that say the clementines have arrived. And what that means is our great port city of New Bedford receives great shipments on a weekly basis of clementines from Morocco, from Northern Africa. So, how did I know this? How did I learn this? Well, because I've been engaging in this global learning and creating partnerships with people around the city. I had a call about 5 or 6 years ago, and someone said, hey, Heidi, did you hear about these clementines that are now going to be coming into New Bedford? And so I jumped on it, and it turns out that these Moroccan clementines are actually destined for Canada, for Montreal, for the Quebec region. But they're shipped into New Bedford, and then they are put on trucks and driven up to Canada. So there's a fascinating process. I'm not going to go into the whole process now. I will leave a link in my, at the end of this broadcast, where you can get in touch with me if you want to learn, some more about this. But I will tell you a few things. It's become an actual unit that I teach because following the Clementines, it's agricultural, there's geography, there's economics, there's politics, there's technology, there's environmental issues, there are a whole myriad of things. So it's become synonymous with global learning, and it's a really um, fun thing when we go and meet the ship and we meet the Homeland Security people and the people from the FDA, the federal, the Food and Drug Administration, and we meet the Coast Guard, and we meet the insurance people, and the truckers, and the people in the ship, and the longshoremen, and the stevedores, and it's a fascinating because it happens very, very quickly, and the really sort of the cherry on the cake is that uh, some of our students, their families are involved in this, working down at the port. So again, they're seeing this, they're seeing these people in a different light and how this little delicious piece of fruit that we casually pop in our mouth and enjoy for a snack is really traveled really, really far to get to us. And so many people have touched this, and it's gone, it's dangerous crossing the seas, particularly this time of year. It could be treacherous, and how it makes it to our shores and then makes its way to Canada. So check this out. Check out your town or city. You may not be receiving clementines from Morocco, but there's surely some good or service or idea that's coming in from afar that could really have a profound effect on your teaching and learning. So I look forward to hearing from any of you listeners out there about things that you maybe have explored already. The next thing I want to talk about are relationships, building relationships and partnerships. And that's a really central part to global learning. And again, it's part of knitting together, seeing how your community is knit together and looking at that fabric and being a part of that and making connections happen. And so build relationships and partnerships in your neighborhood, in your town, with other professionals. Think shopkeepers or galleries, food purveyors, medical professionals, artists, etc. And trust me, once the word is out that you support collaborative learning in your community, you will find that people start coming to you for an exchange of information, of talent, of ideas. And I will tell you, people love to help students. It makes them feel good. If you are a professional that doesn't work in education and someone comes to you and says, I have some high school students or middle school students or elementary school students, most people feel really good about contributing to or being a part of that. So don't be shy. Um, definitely try that. I will tell you, I have literally fallen in love with the city of New Bedford because of the relationships that I have grown since I started to engage in global learning this way. It's really uh, I have new friends. I have a great network of people here, and it's been a very pleasant experience. The other thing is let the students become stewards of their environment and their town. This is done again by uncovering their community this way. They'll gain an appreciation for the interdependence of all who make up the community. Again, the police person, the fire person, the fisher person, the artist, the shopkeeper, etc. Again, back to the Clementines, walking down to the port, seeing all the people that converge on that pier on that day when that ship comes in, and seeing how it all happens. So you and I can pop this thing in our mouth. It's actually quite powerful. So this brings us right back to where we began, global learning and how we're connected around the world. We have stories, we have global connections everywhere. Our veterans who have served overseas, our restaurants serving lovingly prepared dishes from distant lands, and we have businesses with goods and services flowing into and out of places far away. If you do have the opportunity to travel with your students or they can participate in foreign travel, that is really exciting. The first step can be the hardest, but once you've taken that step, you will grow wings and your life will be changed forever. You will have a new set of eyes. I mentioned earlier that I've had the opportunity to travel with the program Port to Port, and one of my partners that I've developed is with the University of Glasgow in Scotland. So I helped the University of Glasgow work on their very first pre-university summer STEAM program, which launched last summer. And very exciting program, interdisciplinary. And what attracted me to that was the fact that Glasgow is a port city as well, but also that it has many of the same issues that New Bedford faces. Post-industrial, it was a major industrial center in the world and certainly in the UK, and New Bedford was a major industrial center as well. And so I'm very interested in comparing and contrasting. So we had 5 students travel to that program last summer. I'm going to provide a link to that program. And anyone who's interested or wants to talk to me about it, it was a life-changing experience for the 5 students. It was a tremendous amount of learning and fun and beautifully designed and quite interesting. And it is going its second year, the summer of 2020. So check it out or connect with me if you have questions. That said, not everyone can travel to Glasgow. So I thought long and hard about that, and I thought, how can I make this connection and continue this conversation about these post-industrial cities? And so what I'm now working on is a program with a high school in Glasgow and our school, and I'm looking to expand this to the South Coast area or even other schools in Massachusetts or beyond, and really look at issues that young people face in post-industrial cities and sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how can we be a part of the solution. Um, so that is ongoing, and I would be happy to talk to anybody about this. Again, the link will be um, how to contact me at the end of this broadcast. So let's not forget that we are a nation of immigrants, all who have stories. So let's connect with them. Let them tell their story. Later this week, my students and I will be heading to look at art from Syria and Turkey at a nearby museum. And then we will head to a Syrian sweet shop. The owner of this sweet shop had to flee Syria during the conflict in his country, and he was quite a serious, well-known baker in his country and went to Turkey for a while and was repatriated to the United States, to Providence, Rhode Island area, not far from us here. And he now has opened a really wonderful sweet shop, Syrian sweet shop. And so we're going to visit this shop, taste some of their treats. Um, and I have a few students that have been really keen on following the conflict in that region of the world, and they are going to be interviewing um, the owner. And so it'll be an interesting experience. So we'll taste the food, we'll look at the art at the museum, we'll meet someone that's experienced the conflict firsthand. His bakery back in Aleppo is now no longer exists, basically, completely bombed out. So again, that's um, an example of using current events, going back in history, connecting with food, connecting with our immigrant population. So quite powerful. So I have a quote here from a speech by Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, that was from, I want to say, 2015. And it says this, it says, "My fellow Americans, tonight I would like to talk with you about immigration. For more than 200 years, our tradition of welcoming immigrants from around the world has given us a tremendous advantage over other nations. For more than 200 years, our tradition of welcoming immigrants from around the world has given us a tremendous advantage over other nations. It's kept us youthful, dynamic, and entrepreneurial. It's shaped our character as a people with limitless possibilities, people not trapped by our past, but able to remake ourselves as we choose." So, in closing, I will say to you, a steady diet of these strategies, even a few of them, will provide students with opportunities to engage in global learning and help them see their part in the world. We are global. Thank you.